Right now I'm being joined by the Dean of the Freshwater Science School at UW-Milwaukee, Dr. David Garman. Doctor, thanks so much for joining me. I'm doing a project for school. My topic is on water and how it pertains to international business. Can you talk about some of the things people and companies are profiting from pertaining to water on an international scale?
For sure. The size of the water industry is in fact very large. You're talking about 400 billion a year in terms of turnover. You've got assets, which invested assets in water, wastewater management and all those sorts of things of probably close to $20 trillion. And you've got deteriorating assets, you've got increasing demand for water, and in many cases, with the climate change which is occurring, you're getting greater variability in that water supply. So you're getting people increasingly looking at whether or not they can profit from trading of water, whether you can do it from reducing losses of water, providing water more efficiently, or even just providing consulting services, which if you can do it correctly, can also be very lucrative in terms of a lot of hard work. So we heard the other day about people in California where they're drilling wells, for example, and the well drillers are working 24 hours a day. This also happens in Australia in exactly the same thing. You have people who are buying their own drilling rigs and then don't know how to operate them. But if you have a flood or you have wet weather conditions, you find that people quickly forget about the crisis. So we have a saying in the water industry that things only ever really happen in a crisis.
You also used to volunteer or work for the International Water Association. How important is it for the entire world globally to get involved in managing some of these crises pertaining to water?
I believe it's absolutely critical. The head of water for the European Federation, EU, said the other day that 90% of productivity in the European common market was dependent on water, which is quite incredible when you think about it. And you start thinking, well, what isn't? But then you start thinking about critical, or the role of water in crisis management. I gave the examples of how one company lost 50% of its market share, and that was a silicon chip manufacturer, when he couldn't ship his products out of Thailand because of floods. We have the other extreme in drought conditions, where people are thinking about relocating and relocating their sourcing of material simply because of water shortages in their traditional markets. So they're diversifying in terms of getting that.
That's very interesting. Now, last question for you. Do you ever think it's going to get to the point where some of these crises turn into where the United States is actually going to war over water, just as we're doing particularly in the Middle East pertaining to oil? Do you think water is going to be at such a shortage that you're going to see countries such as ourselves, or maybe it's even going on now, that people are going to actually start fighting over water?
There is a book called Water Wars, which lists conflicts which could be directly or indirectly related to that. And there's even one written by Peter Annan about water wars around the Great Lakes. That both give you some interesting insights. Probably there'll never be something which is specifically or explicitly related to water, because they'll always try to pull it down to multiple objectives for reasons for doing something, because it seems too silly to go to war over water alone. And yet we see dams being built to block off flows, to divert water. We see international agreements being breached in Africa, for example, simply because they were probably wrongly drawn up in the first place. You have go to various other areas where you have wars, verbal wars between politicians over what is allowed and what isn't allowed to happen in terms of water allocations. These are very complex business, and whilst there may not be any explicit war about it, there's a lot of tension, and in some cases that's resulted to, at the local level, sticks and stones, at a higher level, interference by police and army, and at an international level of a need for peacekeeping activities.